Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. What is it that makes you truly angry? And more importantly, why do you let it control you? Now, I'll tell you something deeply uncomfortable. The source of your anger is not out there. It's not the rude comment, the unfair treatment, or the person who cuts you off in traffic. The anger comes from within you. It's a reflection of the way you perceive the world and how you've been conditioned to react to it. Anger is a powerful emotion, but it's often misunderstood. Many people believe that anger arises because of something someone else does or says. However, the truth is that anger comes from within you. It is not caused directly by the actions of others, but by how you perceive and react to those actions. The external world, with all its chaos and unpredictability, may trigger anger, but the emotion itself is always rooted in your internal response to the situation. When you allow anger to take control, you give away your power. You let an external event dictate your emotional state. For example, if someone insults you or cuts you off in traffic, you might feel your temper flare. But what's really happening is that your mind is interpreting that person's behavior as an attack on your sense of self or your well-being. In that moment, you are assigning meaning to the action, and it's that meaning that creates the emotional response. And the other person's behavior is simply an event. Your reaction to it is what makes it anger-inducing. Realizing that anger comes from within you means accepting that you are responsible for how you react. This doesn't mean you won't feel anger, but it allows you to pause before reacting. Instead of immediately lashing out, you can reflect on why you feel this way. What part of your identity or sense of security is being threatened? This self-awareness can give you the power to choose a different response. It also reminds you that the actions of others are often more about their own struggles and insecurities than about you. By changing the way you interpret situations, you begin to take control of your emotional state and reclaim your peace. In life, it's easy to fall into the habit of blaming others for our emotional reactions. We often look for someone or something to point to when we feel angry, frustrated, or hurt. The person who cut us off in traffic, the colleague who made a dismissive comment, or the friend who let us down. We quickly assign blame to these individuals, believing they are the source of our negative emotions. However, this mindset is both disempowering and inaccurate. When we blame others, we give up control of our emotions. We are telling ourselves that our peace is dependent on external circumstances, and this is a dangerous position to be in. The reality is that we are responsible for how we choose to respond to the actions of others. The people around us will continue to behave in ways that we may not like, but how we react to them is entirely within our control. When we place the blame on others, we put our happiness in their hands, and that is a recipe for frustration. Instead of blaming others, it's crucial to take responsibility for our own emotional responses. This means recognizing that our anger or frustration is a result of our interpretation of the situation. We don't have to take offense or feel disrespected when someone behaves poorly. By internalizing the idea that we control our emotional reactions, we can begin to shift our mindset. Instead of feeling like victims of other people's behavior, we can respond with wisdom, self-awareness, and calm. This shift empowers us to move through life without letting others dictate how we feel, allowing us to maintain a sense of peace and stability no matter what is happening around us. Emotions are powerful forces that can shape our responses to life's challenges, but we often fail to recognize that we have the ability to control them. It's easy to feel as though we are at the mercy of our emotions, especially when we're confronted with difficult situations or interactions. However, the truth is that we do have control over how we respond. We can choose not to let anger or frustration take hold and instead decide to maintain emotional composure. When something happens that triggers you, the initial instinct might be to react immediately with emotion, whether that's anger, frustration, or irritation. But this reaction, while natural, is often impulsive and unhelpful. When you take a step back and pause before reacting, you give yourself the space to consider how best to respond. This pause is incredibly important because it allows you to reflect on the situation before your emotions take over. In that moment, you can decide not to let your emotional state be determined by someone else's actions. Instead of allowing yourself to be swept up by the external circumstances, you can consciously choose a more measured response. This doesn't mean you suppress your feelings, but rather that you take responsibility for them. By becoming more aware of your emotional triggers and recognizing the pattern of your reactions, you can develop a habit of choosing a calm, rational response instead of an emotional outburst. This process takes practice, but the more you focus on it, the easier it becomes to remain in control of your emotions. When you master this, you gain the power to maintain your inner peace no matter what challenges arise. To truly understand and manage our anger, it's essential to dive deeper into why something bothers us so much. Often the immediate emotional response to an external event is not actually about the event itself, but about something within us that it triggers. Our anger might stem from past experiences, unresolved conflicts, or insecurities we haven't fully confronted. When we feel anger rising, it's a signal to pause and ask, why does this upset me? By questioning the root cause, we begin to uncover the underlying issues that contribute to our emotional reactions. For instance, when someone criticizes us, we may feel defensive and angry, but that anger might not solely be because of the criticism itself. Perhaps we have an insecurity about that particular area, and the criticism touches a sensitive spot. This realization is crucial because it highlights that the emotional response is less about the other person's actions and more about how we interpret their words or behavior based on our own vulnerabilities. In these moments, we have a choice to react with anger or to reflect on the deeper issue that the situation is exposing. Identifying the true source of our anger can be uncomfortable, but it's also liberating. It allows us to take ownership of our emotions and stop projecting them onto others. When we recognize that our anger is rooted in our own feelings of inadequacy, fear, or past pain, we can address those issues directly instead of reacting to the trigger. This self-awareness helps us break free from the cycle of unnecessary anger and instead choose a response that's more thoughtful, measured, and ultimately freeing. Instead of lashing out, we can choose understanding, both for ourselves and for the other person involved. Setting boundaries is a crucial aspect of maintaining emotional stability and protecting our peace. It's important to understand that setting boundaries doesn't mean becoming passive or letting others walk all over us. It means asserting ourselves in a way that preserves our emotional health without compromising our values. Often, people think that standing firm in their boundaries requires confrontation or aggression, but it doesn't. Boundaries are about being clear and consistent in what you will and will not accept, while still maintaining composure and calm. When someone crosses a boundary, whether it's a disrespectful comment, an unreasonable request, or any behavior that makes you uncomfortable, the natural impulse might be to get angry or defensive. However, anger doesn't need to be the first response. Instead of immediately reacting, you can calmly express your needs and limits. For example, you might say, I don't appreciate that tone, or that's not something I'm willing to do. This allows you to assert yourself without letting the situation escalate into a conflict. The power of setting boundaries lies in your ability to remain emotionally grounded while clearly communicating what you need. You're not reacting to the other person's actions. Instead, you're responding by reinforcing what's acceptable for you. This shift in approach helps you avoid getting lost in an emotional battle or letting the other person's behavior dictate your feelings. Over time, by consistently asserting boundaries, you cultivate a sense of self-respect and emotional control. You become less affected by others' actions because you know what you stand for and what you will tolerate. Setting boundaries, when done calmly and assertively, is a way to protect your peace while maintaining respect for both yourself and others. Taking ownership of our reactions is one of the most empowering things we can do for ourselves. Life will never be free of conflict or challenges. People will always have differing opinions, situations will be less than ideal, and things won't always go our way. The true power, however, lies in how we choose to respond. We cannot control the behavior of others, but we can control how we react to them. The key to maintaining emotional peace is realizing that no matter what happens outside of us, we hold the responsibility for our inner state. When we take ownership of our reactions, we stop seeing ourselves as victims of other people's actions. Instead, we see ourselves as the architects of our emotional responses. If someone behaves in a way that we find irritating, hurtful, or unfair, it is up to us to decide how we will handle the situation. We can choose to let it affect us, allowing anger or frustration to consume us, Or we can choose to maintain our peace and handle the situation calmly. This choice is always ours. By taking ownership of our responses, we break the cycle of emotional reactivity that many people fall into. Rather than letting emotions dictate our behavior, we create space to respond thoughtfully and intentionally. This means acknowledging our feelings without letting them control us. Instead of blaming others for our emotional distress, we become aware of how our thoughts and beliefs shape our reactions. When we take full responsibility for our emotional state, we reclaim our power and become less susceptible to being influenced by external circumstances. This inner strength allows us to navigate the world with greater ease and balance, regardless of the challenges we face.